Routers are considered by many to be one of the most versatile tools a woodworker can own. What exactly is a router, and what exactly does it do? Well, I'm going to help answer those questions. I'm going to help you decide if a router is right for your shop. So what is a router? Well, according to Wikipedia, terrible source of research by the way, a router is a power tool with a flat base and a blade that extends below the base. Not exactly helpful, is it? The truth is, a router can do so much that it's hard to cap it off in one sentence. From edge work to inlays, to cutting, to decoration, to adding texture. A router is such a versatile tool that you simply can't sum it up in one or two words.
However, if I had to sum up a router in one sentence, I would say that it is a power tool that uses a multitude and variety of shaped metal blades, known as bits, to create various effects, shapes, and edge profiles on wooden projects.
So let's start off with the basics. What types of router are there? Well, ignoring brand names and colours for a minute, routers tend to come in one of two sizes, a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch. There are other sizes out there, but these are the two most common that you're going to see. The size refers to the shank, which is the diameter of the bit that will then insert within the router. More often than not, a larger router like a 1/2 inch shank will have the ability to host larger bits and have a more powerful motor, meaning it's got a greater cutting capacity. However, this does mean that they tend to be a little bit bigger and bulkier and potentially more expensive than their smaller counterparts. You'll often see these types of routers used for really powerful, big jobs, such as kitchen fitters cutting joints into worktops. By contrast, its baby brother, the 1/4 inch router, often called a trim or a palm router, takes smaller 1/4 inch shank bits and is best used for things like skirting, architrave, or adding roundovers and chamfers to the sides of your woodworking projects. After taking into account the size of the bit and the size of the motor, you then have two distinct variants of router, a plunge-based router or a fixed-base router. Now, a plunge base is where you can set the depth of cut you wish to achieve on your bit, and then you can lower or plunge the bit into the wood. What this means is you can change the depth your router is cutting at throughout the duration of the cut. This is really helpful if you're cutting something like a hole or an inlay or something that's internal on the piece of wood and you don't want to have to route in from the sides. By contrast, you can also get a fixed base router. And this is where you can set the depth of the bit prior to making the cut, and then throughout the duration of your cut, that bit will stay at the same depth. If you want to adjust it, you have to turn the router off, make a manual adjustment, lock it in place, and then go again. And that's why a fixed base router is generally used when you're doing effects on the edge of a piece. Some routers, like this Dewalt model here, come with both a plunge base that can be swapped out and replaced with a fixed base like this one here. So you can choose the appropriate base for the cut you want to make. Additionally, you can also convert your 1/2 inch router into a 1/4 inch router by getting some of these. These are little converters that just sit inside your router and turn it from a 1/2 inch shank into a 1/4 inch, meaning you can use smaller bits if you want to. So how do routers cut? Well, as a general rule, a router's blade will spin clockwise. And when you're using it, you want to make sure you're working against that cut. Otherwise, it's going to pull the router forwards. So for instance, when you're using a router to route an edge of a piece, you want to make sure you're going from left to right so that you're moving anti-clockwise whilst the bit is moving clockwise. And this allows you to have greater control of your cut. It is possible to move with the bit. This is known as a climb cut, but it's significantly harder to do, more dangerous, and can result in quite nasty tear out on your piece as well. So as a general rule, I would avoid this if you're just starting out using a router. Just going to pause for a minute there and say thank you so much for watching so far. And if you're enjoying my content, please consider liking the video, as this helps boost its viewability to other users of the YouTube platform. As well as that, if you're not subscribed, please consider clicking that subscribe button and the bell notification so you get a notification every single time I upload. Thanks. Back to the video. So what can a router do and what are the bits you can get for it? There are an infinite amount of possibilities with this. So I've tried to split these down into as fewer categories as possible, and I'm going to talk you through those now. First off, we've got edge work. such as putting roundovers or chamfers on the edge of your pieces and projects. Then we've got housings, and for this I'm talking about things like dados and stop dados and dovetail variants. And also in this category I include things like inlays if you're putting bow ties in, or juice grooves if you're making a chopping board. You've also got production work and batching, such as using a flush trim bit with a template to produce repeated cuts and designs over and over that you can then sell. And you've got cutting, like I mentioned earlier. If you use a 2-flute straight bit on a 1/2-inch router, you can easily cut through solid oak worktops that are about 2 inches thick if you are installing a kitchen. And then of course you've also got decorative work, writing, signage, or adding texture to any project. So what ways are there to use your router? Well, the most common way you'll see people using it is of course freehand, especially if they're using a fixed space router against the edge of something. They'll simply butt the bit up against the side of their workpiece and move across in that left to right fashion. However, if you wanted to use a plunge piece, or you wanted to create an effect that ran parallel with your edge, you could of course use a guide rail, and most routers will come supplied with this, or you can easily find an online one that matches your model. You can also use jigs such as a worktop piece for those again on kitchen fitters, and a guide bushing inside your router to do so. However, if you're going to use a guide bushing and a worktop jig, you need to make sure you add the distance from the blade to your guide bushing onto your marked cut line, otherwise you're going to cut your piece too short. If you're not comfortable using your router freehand, or you want to do something slightly different, you can of course get a router table, which has your router installed underneath so the bit is facing upwards. These can vary from professionally bought cast iron and metal router tables to custom built ones made of plywood, or even just a sheet of spare plywood with the router bolted in from underneath. And if you'd like to see a super simple, super effective router table that you can make, Mark over at Start Making has a brilliant video on this, and I'll link it in the pinned comments down below. So I hope that's helped you understand a little bit about what routers are and what routers can do. And maybe it's helped you work out if A, you want a router for your shop, and if you do, what size you're going to go for, or what model, or if you want corded, cordless, 1/2-inch, 1/4-inch, etc., etc. Routers can be expensive, but there are some cheap options out there as well that do just as good a job, but maybe aren't from such a big brand. I'll link a few below in the description that I think are good, or ones that I've personally used. But what router do you use, and what's your favourite bit? The options are so endless. I'd love it if the comments could be filled with different things people use their routers for, so viewers can help understand just how versatile this wonderful tool is. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.